This story is not mine. It's my step-grandmother's, who had quite the colorful young adulthood growing up in Virginia. This story takes place in the late 1970s, back when credit cards were used to open locked doors. My grandmother lived in South Richmond, which was at the time the murder capital of the United States. She worked at night shift as a security guard at a hotel and lived in a new apartment complex in the inner city. Fresh out of college, she didn't have the income to live anywhere else. She stayed on the third floor of the apartment building. It was unlit and rather dark, even at high noon, and especially during the nights. Not long after she had gotten home from work one night, she heard shuffling outside of her door. Since there was a significant amount of dead leaves collected in the stairwell, she figured it was the wind. She ignored it and sat down to eat dinner before going to bed. The shuffling started up again, along with a thud against her door. It was then that she heard a credit card, or something of the sort, being inserted in the space between her door and the door frame in an attempt to get the lock to disengage. She grabbed a baseball bat from under her couch and got up and shouted at the would-be intruder that she was a security guard and that she was armed. She expected to hear footsteps heading in the opposite direction. Instead, she heard someone say, "You're going to open this door, and I'm going to kill you." She froze, as I imagine anyone would, and all was silent. She heard the man chuckle outside of her door, but didn't try to jimmy the lock any further. Instead, he began banging and scraping on the door until around 5 o'clock in the morning. My grandma was terrified to leave her apartment, afraid that when she did return, she would find the intruder inside. She later went to the manager of the apartment complex, who deferred her to the Richmond police. They informed her that there had been multiple reports of similar incidents in the area, as well as sexual assaults and murders. This happened around the same time the Briley brothers were on a killing spree. Linwood Earl Briley was known to target and kill women on his own, as well as with his brother. It was likely him outside the apartment that night, though this is only speculation, but it's the only explanation they could come up with at the time. This happened during spring break. I was 16 at the time. Myself and about 20 other people went out to the woods in Surrey County and rented out a cabin on this nice little retreat. We had planned on staying there for 4 days. To give a bit more detail about the cabin, it was surrounded on all sides by a thick forest. To the west of the cabin are some hunting trails and a creepy abandoned trailer next to a small clearing with a single pine tree in the center. To the east was a very large open field. At the far end of the field was a slope that led down to a beach. On our last night there, a group of about 8 of us decided to go down to the beach and sit around and sing songs while playing guitar. 11 p.m. rolled around. Everything was going fine. And then 3 of the guys decided to head back to the cabin and grab some food. They were gone for only about 10 minutes before one of them called his brother, who was still on the beach with us. His reaction to the call made it seem like something happened or someone had gotten hurt. When he got off the phone, he said, "We have to leave here, right now," in a very hushed and panicked voice. We all asked why, and he told us that while the others were heading back to the cabin, they found a rabbit at the top of the trail, with its head cut clean off. Not ripped off like an animal's doing, but cut like someone took a knife to the rabbit. So we automatically thought they were just fucking with us. We began walking back, brandishing the guitar and a metal pipe we found as weapons, just in case they really weren't messing around. About halfway up the hill, we hear rustling in the trees and twigs snapping. It sounded like someone was walking up to the side of the slope. We called out to them, "Knock it off, guys. This isn't funny." I was a bit irritated because we were having a good time on the beach, and we had to cut it short over what we thought was a lame joke. But the movement within the trees stopped very suddenly. After nothing else happened, we kept going. And once we neared the top of the hill, I turned on my phone's flashlight. On the ground in front of me lay a rabbit with its head cut clean off. We took off running and heard something run out of the woods, but we didn't stop to see what it was. We kept going until we got to the cabin. We found all the guys sitting inside. We locked every door and window. A couple of the guys, including myself, stayed up all night to keep watch and make sure whoever was out there didn't follow us back to the cabin. We all fell asleep around 6:30 a.m., but we only got a little over an hour's rest, because we woke up at around 8 to someone flipping out about a decapitated rabbit head lying on the porch, just outside the front door. Someone obviously didn't want us there, so we took the hint and left. This happened in 1999. This incident took place many miles from my hometown, near the mountains in central Virginia. My friend, who I'll call Trey, and I had gone on a road trip to see some caverns. This was the first time that our parents had allowed us to drive this far away from home by ourselves. This was also the time before Google Maps, Siri, or ChatGPT, so we were relying on old-school paper maps. Remember, never fold the maps, always roll them up. We had already missed a few rest areas marked on the maps, and Trey really had to take a piss. Finally, we spotted a sign that said, "Rest area in 2 miles." We pulled in at around 10 p.m. There were a few cars in the parking lot, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. We hopped out of our van, took care of business, and went to go grab some soda and snacks from the vending machines. We still had another 25 minutes of driving before we got to the hotel. While we were being indecisive at the vending machines, we soon noticed that the cars and people we saw when we first arrived had all left. There were a few tractor trailers humming off to the side, but they were far enough in the back of the parking lot that they wouldn't have heard us screaming. We then saw an older model navy blue Chevy come through the entrance. At first, I was semi-relieved, but as I watched the truck enter, it parked right next to our van, ignoring the 45 other parking spaces that were available. I tried to downplay it, thinking that maybe they were going for the safety in numbers approach or something. Even though people often avoided parking next to vans in dark parking lots, even back in those days. This truck had pulled up to the passenger side door of our van, and as we walked toward it, no one had gotten out. Trey said something along the lines of, "Hey, what are they up to?" "I don't know, but they parked really close to us." I had to squeeze between the truck and the passenger side van door. I almost told Trey that I wasn't going to do it, but I rounded the back of the van, squeezed through quickly, jumped in, and slammed the door as if someone was about to grab me. Just as we got back in, I turned to put on my seatbelt, and a man emerged out of the Chevy and stood in the small space between our vehicles, knocking on my rolled-up window. I let out a squeal and instinctively locked the door, right in his face. He reminded me of the comedian Gallagher, who used to smash watermelons. Only this guy was wearing a dirty baseball cap. He said something like, "Sorry to scare you," and then started rambling about being lost. I cracked the window down just a bit and replied, "We're not from here, so we couldn't be of much help." "Do you know for past Petersburg?" he asked, ignoring my attempt to brush him off. Trey and I glanced at each other, because Petersburg was at least 80 miles away in the opposite direction. So I said, again, I don't know, sir. There's a large map inside that might help." Ignoring me again, he suddenly reached up, slid his fingers into the crack of the window, and started yanking, as if he was trying to break the glass. I still don't know how it didn't give way. As Trey fumbled her keys from her lap to the ignition, we were both panicking and yelling at him to stop. Trey finally turned over the ignition. In a low, growly voice, he said, "I've drank blood fresher than yours anyway," and gave the window one more yank before Trey backed out of the parking space, his fingers still on the window while I was frantically trying to roll it up. Looking back, I wish I had been a bit faster, because it might have been worth taking his fingers off. He didn't follow us as we fled back toward the interstate. We didn't inform the police or our parents because we didn't want to hear any stranger danger or "I told you so" lectures. But I hope I never encounter another creepy vampire Gallagher ever again. This happened in 1996 when I was 17. My best friend Derek and I were driving from my hometown in upstate New York to visit my cousins in North Carolina. It was a bit past midnight, and the road was completely empty. To avoid tolls, I picked some back roads to travel on. Derek and I were caught up in some stupid school-related gossip, not really paying attention to our surroundings. I remember it had been a while since passing the "Welcome to Virginia" sign, when I noticed that my gas tank was running low. I pulled off the main road into what looked like a small town. There were no signs to indicate the name of this place, but after doing some research, I think we were in a town called Union Level, but I could be wrong. The best way to describe the town would be to picture one of those nuke towns in New Mexico, except nestled in the backwoods of Virginia. There was a main street, lined with boarded-up houses and old storefronts with busted-out windows. Derek and I went completely silent. The atmosphere of this place was intense, despite seeing no one. "This place is creepy as hell," I said, as we continued down the main road. As we approached what appeared to be the end of the block, we noticed an orange-tinted light coming from beside a brick building, kind of like when you see a campfire from a distance. I slowly drove up to the brick building. If there was a fire going, maybe there were some people who could tell us where the nearest gas station was. However, I didn't want to exit my car. We went a little past the building to where we could see the fire from our vantage point. Before I tell you what we saw, I know how insane it's going to sound. And I'm not sure if it's actually what I think it was. I can only tell you what it looked like to me. There appeared to be a man hoisted on a crucifix, engulfed in flames. He didn't appear to be moving at all, which makes me think it could have been either a mannequin or someone who is already dead. Upon seeing the burning man, I immediately turned the car around. Despite my car running on fumes at this point, I floored it out of there. As we were going back through the abandoned town, I felt a thud against the side of the car, but I didn't slow down at all. We got back to the main road, and I drove down the highway until I saw what looked like a well-lit gas station. We pulled up to an empty pump, and after collecting ourselves, we exited the car. I instantly walked over to where I felt the thud earlier and saw a bullet hole just above my rear driver's side tire. I'm no gun expert, but it looked like a 9mm. I flipped out. If it had been just a bit lower, it would have blown out the tire, and we would have been trapped in that abandoned town. I ran inside the gas station and told the clerk about what just happened. I asked him if he knew the name of the town up the road, but he just stared at me blankly. And not to be too harsh here, but I don't think English was his first language. So I told the guy just to call the cops, which he seemed to understand. Thankfully, I drove a Toyota and my gas tank was on the passenger side of the car. While we were waiting for the police to arrive, we filled up and I parked the car outside of the store. Soon, a patrol car pulled in next to us. I'm kind of a new viewer to your channel, but I just discovered the Rake vs. Dogman series you did a while back. There's a character in that story that reminded me of the cop we met that night, Officer Dixon. And for those of you who don't get the reference, I'm saying this guy was a real piece of shit. We explained to him what happened, and he just sort of dismissed everything we said, even denying that there was an abandoned town around there. But something told me this guy knew exactly what I was talking about, and I was getting a bit pissed off, because he was clearly lying and not taking us seriously. Listen, sounds like y'all was trespassing on someone's property, and around here, people carry guns. I'm pretty sure it's illegal just to shoot at someone. Stop talking. Y'all clearly ain't from around here. Do me a favor, and just get back in your car and get the hell out of here. The officer then placed a hand over his holster. Something seriously messed up was going on around here, and something told me that if I argued with him any further, my friend and I would end up in the obituaries. Yes, sir. Sorry to have troubled you. No problem, young man. I'll just stay behind y'all till you reach the county line, just to make sure y'all get out of here safely. The officer watched us get back into the car, and we left the gas station. I know he said he was going to follow us, but I honestly didn't see anyone behind us until we got to a more populated area. As I said before, the ghost town looked a lot like Union Level, but I'm still not entirely sure if that was the place or not. Something was going on there, and the cop was clearly warning us not to get too curious. My theory is that we came across some kind of ritual, and the area that we were in was controlled by a cult. Again, that's just me spitballing, but what I do know for sure is that I made the right decision by not arguing with the cop any further and leaving. I'd much rather have a hole in my car than in my head. The story occurred about 10 years ago. I was around 20 years old at the time. I had been working at a small mom-and-pop health food store in Virginia for a few months. A truly lovely, tight-knit staff with an owner who was basically a mother to me. The other older ladies were my best friends, kind of like the aunts I never had. Of course, with me being the youngest woman working there, I got a lot of hours and ended up closing shop most nights. Soon I was comfortable enough to be closing by myself. We had a regular customer that had been coming in for quite a few years, even before I started working there. He was a local holistic doctor, a brilliant one at that. He was around maybe 40 years old, divorced and well-to-do. He spent a shit ton of money at the shop, sometimes taking an entire car full of groceries home. Needless to say, the owner was pleased to have his business. The first time I met him, he said, "Well, hello there. I'm Dr. Malloy. I don't think we've met." He stuck out his hand and displayed a charming smile. I will admit that he was quite handsome, very nice and funny. My coworker Pam stood a little off to the side and sort of gave me a look that said, be careful with this one." Sort of a clairvoyant thing she had going on. She was, and still is, very protective of me. "This is Diana. She just started working here." "Well, it's nice to meet you, Diana. I'm sure it's nice to have some young blood working around here now." He took his sweet time and chit-chatted about what he did, how successful he was, and how he will be coming in more often to see my pretty face. He made sure my coworkers didn't hear that last part. So fast forward a few more months, and this guy had been coming in almost every night, specifically when he knew I would be there. Basically right at closing time, which would annoy the shit out of me. But I was too nice, and knew that we needed the business. Then began the usual inappropriate questions: how old I was, where I lived, and how I must have had a boyfriend. You know, if you ever need any help with your health, or if you need guidance, I can be of service. I also have a home office. I always answered him very vaguely, and never revealed to him where I lived. One Thanksgiving, he asked if I would mind coming over and cooking a turkey for him. No. At this point, it had gotten so bad, I informed my boyfriend Jackson, who's now my husband. I told him he would likely be in the store on Friday night, and if he could please come and keep me company while I began to close. My boyfriend comes in, and not a few minutes later, Dr. Malloy arrives. He looks stunned when he sees Jackson. I look at my boyfriend and nod. Dr. Malloy says, "Hey, buddy," in a condescending tone, of course. His entire demeanor had changed, and his eyes were dead holes and fixed on me like I had betrayed him. Jackson was leaning over the counter as Dr. Malloy piled stuff quickly and silently into his cart. I should mention that Jackson is a 6'7", scruffy, bearded mountain man, and he's wearing his cycling clothes. Dr. Malloy checks out and says, "See you soon." He ignores my boyfriend and leaves, but not before winking at me. Jackson is noticeably pissed off and watches Dr. Malloy go out to his car. The next day, Malloy confronts me about my boyfriend. "Was that him, your boyfriend? He's a real bro, huh?" Snarky and pompous. I reply, "Yes, he's actually really wonderful." Jackson began staying with me till close whenever he could. Dr. Malloy starts waiting for me to go on break, trying to get me to go with him to a nearby cafe. My coworkers start getting very annoyed, and I start hiding. You know, all that shit. It was around this time that I got a pretty bad rib injury on my bike and had to stay home. I live in a very secluded old apartment that sits above an old art gallery. It's about a 15-minute walk away. That day, a friend was visiting from Germany, and I was so excited to see him. He brought me food and coffee, and we were just chilling inside, catching up, when we hear, "Hello? Is anyone there?" I recognize the voice. What the actual fuck? I open the door, and it's Dr. Malloy, holding a large suitcase. "I heard you were injured. I brought my acupuncture supply, and I'd like to gift it to you with a session." He tries to walk in. My friend is baffled, and I say, No thanks. My friend is here visiting, and he's taking good care of me." He looks at my friend, and his eyes fill with rage. "I came all the way here for you, and this is what I get? You have 2 boyfriends now? Disgusting." At this point, my friend steps between us and tells him to leave and shuts the door. Dr. Malloy bangs on the door, cursing and flipping out, before eventually leaving. I told my coworkers and my boyfriend about what happened. Jackson is enraged and wants to strangle this guy. But things calm down when Dr. Malloy seemingly disappears for a while. But now, his roommate starts scouting me out for him, asking me if I'd like to come over for dinner and have some fun, and tells me that Dr. Malloy really misses me. I am livid, and I tell him to fuck off. His friend just wasn't right. Real sex offender vibes, if you catch my drift. It wasn't long after that when Dr. Malloy waited outside the store as I was leaving for my break. My boyfriend was on his way to take me out, but Dr. Malloy stops me and says, "You're gonna come with me today." No. I'm going out with my boyfriend. Please leave me alone." "No, I'm going to take you to Montana. Get in my car. Leave your boyfriend. I can take care of you for the rest of your life. I know you love me. Don't lie." He's saying all this to me while holding onto my wrist and trying to drag me away when Pam bursts through the door, screaming and pulling on his shoulders. Dr. Malloy grabs my hair and basically tried to rip it out of my head. Then Jackson comes running over and tackles this piece of shit and puts him into a headlock. Everyone is yelling and losing it. I'm silent and in shock. The police are called. Dr. Malloy was arrested and in cuffs. The last thing he says to me is, "Your ass is mine." Restraining order ensues. I didn't press any charges. We were about to move to a new place anyhow, and I knew I was protected at work. Last I heard, Dr. Malloy closed his business and moved to Montana, and he can stay there.
There's always a reason to be afraid.